Alright, so I wanted to go a little bit more in depth on the tube notching because I know that's what a lot of people are curious about when they are thinking about getting a kid or doing their own cage work or anything. So I thought I would do a little bit, and I've already got this one started on this side. I haven't started it on the other side yet, but I got it started on this side, and you can see it's just at a little bit of an angle. I think I've got about a 9 or 10 degree angle on it right now. But yeah, so it's fairly straightforward. You just get your tube lined up, mark your center line. The first notch isn't very critical because it's wherever. So usually what I'll do on tubes that are going to be like on 2 straight tubes, like 90 degrees, and it has to be like square, I will take a level and set my tube on the bench and mark a line with using the level. That way it's straight, and that way it can, or you can line up the line with the bottom of your notch and it'll be straight with each other. Notches like this, you can do that, but it's a whole lot harder, I would say, than just kind of eyeballing it, because it's going to be on 2 separate planes. So this one is coming over like this, and then what I'll do here, I can get my marker out of my pocket and drop it. Get this one set about where I want it, and then I will mark my angle here, and I'm just kind of eyeballing a straight line across, lining up with this tube. One of the perils of doing this: drop tubes, make a lot of noise. Gavin's over there dancing, trying to make me laugh, I guess. I don't know. Trying to distract me. But I'm just eyeballing a straight line with this tube, and that'll kind of get me a rough estimate on my angle. And then I will put a mark about where the bottom of the notch needs to be, which is about there-ish. So this is my angle. This is like where the bottom of the notch needs to be. It's just an estimate, but it'll get me close enough that I can start working it down and stuff. So anyway, and what I'll use to fine-tune things is this little guy. It's just a electric die grinder with an 1.5-inch drum sander on it, and we found that the 1.5-inch actually work the best for the 1 5/8 tube. Don't know why, but they do. But yeah, these things are the bomb, because before we were using angle grinders, and they would they're just a lot harder. It's doable, but it's a lot harder than this, because this essentially acts as your other tube. So if, say, on this one, if I want to fine tune it for the main hoop up here, I would just essentially set this about at the angle that the main hoop is, and then I can just work it down with this. Obviously, I'm not going to do that when it's flat, but after I've notched it and stuff, I can fine tune it really easily with this, and it works very well. So, yep, go notch this, and we'll see if we can get it fit. All right, so we got it notched on the other side now, but it's still a little long. Actually, still a lot long, but it's quite a bit closer. But if you look, when I put this on here with where the notch is flat on it, and then I know that I need more angle in it because I'm wanting to land the tube here. It's only about 1.5 inches away because I'm hitting this tube on the edge of this. So I want it to be over here where it needs to land, so it looks like I'm gonna need more angle because I'm probably 5 inches away from where I need to be on the top. So I need more angle, that way it pushes it over to about here, so I know that when I come over and get it fit onto this where it needs to be, it'll be right over, it'll land right where I want it up here. So the rotation looks off, so it looks like it needs to rotate clockwise for me, counterclockwise, clockwise for you. But it's close. Probably needs another inch or so taken out of it, but I like to get it to work it and get the rotation and try and get the angle as close as I can first, and then I'll just work it slowly back and just make small changes. So I'll go put a little more angle in it and take a little bit more off, and we'll come back. All right, so I got this one with more angle on it now. So let's see if it fits. And it looks like it's going to, or at least be very close. So now you can see it's in the same spot that it was before, but this end is much closer to where it needs to be, and it's about right. It could maybe use a little bit more, but I can fine tune it with that drum sander and get it the rest of the way. But it's close enough now that I can take it out of this side now, put a little notch on this. That way it sits over this tube, because it's going to have to notch this way for this one, but then I have to bring and cut a notch in it on this bottom side so it fits over this too. So this is where things get complicated. So I'm just going to kind of set it up here roughly about where it's going to be, and then take my marker, and I usually just run it along the tube that I'm trying to notch it for, and that'll get me about where the top edge needs to be, and give me a rough idea of the angle. So now we are, see if I can see it, tube's dark too. So there's my mark there, and I will put it in the notcher. With our notcher, you can't notch on 2 different angles. It's kind of only a 1 angle deal. So this one is going to be a little bit more difficult. I can get it close and then take the rest of it out with the drum sander, because obviously that's handheld. I can pull it however I need to hold it. So yeah, I'll notch it as much as I can with the notcher, and then I'll just have to fine tune it the rest of the way with the drum sander. So with it up here about where you need it, I like to put it right over where I know it's going to land, and then I will mark where the center of the tube that I want it to land on is. I'll try and go as best as I can in a straight line in that direction. That way I know about where it's going to be. So I'll do that and be right back. All right, so this is where tools shine. So I've got this short piece here that I can use as a guide for this, and this is just essentially 3D printed, and it's just got these rods in it that you can move however you need to move them. This particular one is from a company called Centurial, and it works pretty good. I've got another brand. This one's Pipe Master. I can't decide which one I like better. This one's nice because the rods are smaller, so you can get a little bit more detail. But I only have an 1 5/8 one in this particular brand, so we're going to use this one because this one's in for 1.5 inch tube. But essentially, all we're going to do is take and put this at about the angle that I know it's going to be at. And this is essentially just to get me close. It's not going to be exact. You can make it exact, but it requires a whole bunch of stuff. There's a few videos of, I think, the Pipe Master one where they explain how to use it, and it's really a complicated process, but I like to use it just in the general get me relatively close kind of way, and it works pretty good that way. So I just push all these rods down about where they I think this one's tough. Get it pressed down where you need it. And like I say, the Pipe Master one's a little bit nicer because of the smaller rods. It has a little bit more detail for like really complicated notches, but this one's still really good and really helpful. So that gets me at least a rough idea of what my notch needs to look like. That way I can put it on this tube, and I've already got it partially cut out just from eyeballing it and kind of actually guessing. But then we can just kind of line these up, and it's not super close, but that's because I wasn't necessarily at the exact right angle, but it just gives me a nice idea of where I need to cut this notch out for this tube. So all I'll do here is just mark it out. Just roughly is fine, because I'm gonna just cut it out on the bandsaw, and then I'll be able to use the die grinder with the drum sander on it and get it fine-tuned. This just knocks the majority of the material off just to get it working mostly. And then with the drum sander, I can get it set down on there, and I can make little tweaks to it, because I'm not going to be able to get it absolutely perfect, because a lot of this stuff is kind of a it doesn't fit until it fits kind of a process. So, and then if you take too much off, then you got to either redo it or you got a big gap to fill. So we don't like gaps. Alright, so I'm back in my hole here. And like I said, I'm just gonna use the drum sander to knock the rest of this out, and then It should be pretty close. I think it's still about a 1/4 of an inch long or so. So, just get it knocked out. And that's why these things are awesome, because just like that, I got it back down to my line really quick, and it should fit relatively well. I left a lot of extra on it though, so it may still need more taken out to fit right, but I don't want to take out too much. But it definitely still needs some taken out of it. Yeah, even if you're just doing one cage, that's a tool I would recommend highly. Like even if you're just doing, say, like one of our cage kits, I cannot tell you how much nicer this is than an angle grinder with like a flap wheel on it. It's so much easier to fit tubes. It's ridiculous. And I think it's $260 at this point in time with 2 batteries. They're smaller batteries, but it would get you by. That's what we used for a long time until we got the bigger batteries. But yeah, it's definitely a tool worth getting. And then getting the drum sander. And then I think the sanding drums we get from McMaster Carr, if I remember right. So yeah, we're still about a 1/4 of an inch long, I think. Yeah, a little bit. I think I'm going to take a little bit more out of this side. But yeah, it's definitely a lifesaver for notching tubes, because trying to do it with an angle grinder, you essentially have to stop and mark each time where the tube is touching. Otherwise, you're just not going to get it fit very well. So, we're close. I think when it comes over, it's going to be almost there. Yeah, I'll get this fine-tuned a little bit and come back and show you the end result. Alright, so I just wanted to show something here. I've got it fit pretty good, like it's on there, and it's to the point that I could just clean it and tack it on. But there's just a little itty bitty gap all the way around this top side here. So it's not anything major, like it's completely weldable. Like if you had that gap on a tube that you don't have any more tube or something like that, you could totally weld that. Like that's completely doable. But it's just the little details, like I could work on this for probably 1 more minute and get it to where there's like no gap. Matt's over there building headers, being very noisy on the bandsaw. anyway, right down here is where it's touching. So if I take the drum sander and just take that little bit out down here on this bottom side, this top will sink down and then there won't be any gap. There won't be any gap on this tube. So let me do that real quick and we'll see if we can't get it fitting any better. And like I said, even got it on this side fitting really well. All the way around it, it fits really well. So it's just one of those little things, you know, it's good enough you could weld it, but just a little bit more work on it and it'll be like perfect. Blow off the little fuzzies there. Get it back up where we were. And now it's touching. And then, so these corners, there's a little bit that's keeping it up on this corner here because we weld the joints on the previous tube. If you're overlapping them, you always want to weld your joints. That way all the tubes are welded all the way around. So with this weld being in here, this little piece of corner right here is hitting it. So you can just take and file just a little bit off. Like it doesn't need much at all. And that's all going to depend on the size of your weld. Then put it on here. Line her back up where you want it. Now it's not hitting. And that gap is gone. So, yep. And it just needs to be held in place just a little bit, but I can hold it while I tack it. But I got to clean the tube and drill a hole and stuff anyway. So, anyway, that's some tube notching basics. Some not so basics. But so with cleaning the tubes off, we just use one of these little disc sanders. Ours are cordless. You can use a corded. It really doesn't matter. You could even use sandpaper and just run up and down it with sandpaper until you get all the mill scale off. But you definitely want to get the mill scale off. We clean the entire tube. I think on the Motion Blazers when we started doing that because we were going to paint it. So I was like, well, I don't want to prep the cage and have to clean all these tubes while it's in. So I cleaned all the tubes as I was going. And then me and Matt both realized like, hey, why aren't we doing this on all of them? Because now when we have to weld something to the cage, a tab, a bracket, anything, then we don't have to clean the tube off. It's already cleaned. It's already ready to go. So we just started cleaning every tube as we put it in. And it's been a lot nicer. So 80 grit is what I like to use on these because it seems to be the best balance between giving it a nice finish and taking off the scale quickly. But then we'll go over it with a Scotch-Brite pad afterwards to get the rest of anything off and like all the scratches and stuff. And then it just smooths the tube out really nice. So then we'll clean out the inside, deburr the inside, and wipe it out and get all the material out of there. That way when you go to weld it, it's not sucking all that through your weld. All right, so this is our deburring tool. just a little swivel on the end here with essentially just like a little knife edge. And you'll just take and run it along the inside. They make solid ones, but the pivot ones are nice for doing tube. But that cleans off that burr really nicely. And then let's take paper towels, usually with some acetone. This one's just dry, it doesn't really matter. Blow it out a little, and it's nice and clean. And then just do that on every tube, every joint and everything, and you'll thank yourself when you go to start welding it. You always want to drill holes when you're doing cage work or anything. Just a little 1/8" hole underneath your notch on every tube, because if you don't, then when you go to weld it, the gases inside the tube will expand, and once you've got one side welded and you're welding the other side, when you get to that last little bit, the gases have nowhere else to go, so they're going to try and come out that hole that's left as you're welding. So if you have a hole, then the gases can expand to the rest of the cage, and you're fine. Like, it's enough area that it can't expand that fast. It's not that much. But when it's just a single tube, especially on smaller diameter tube, like on the gussets and stuff like that, it'll blow those out really easy because they're thin and they're small. So there's not a lot of room for those gases to go. So if you don't have a hole, you're pretty much always going to blow out the end. And then you'll have to let it cool and go back and fill your hole in where it blew it out. So always drill holes. Just makes it easier when you're welding it. It's less frustrating. So I will drill a hole here. And on a lot of the tubes, when I'm first starting the cage and everything, I'll drill a hole in each end. That way everything starts getting connected. But now the whole floor structure is connected to the main hoop, the driver structure and everything. This number 15 bar here. So I can just drill a hole in this one, and then it gets connected to the rest of it. I don't have to drill another hole in the main hoop. So if you kind of plan out where you drill your holes, then you don't have to drill holes in both ends every single time. But in the beginning, I do, just until I get like the main structure. And then once I start just adding like the filler tubes and stuff, that's when I usually just break or go down to one hole. All right, so I got this one tacked in now. Just real light tacks, just in case for some reason, whatever, you may have to break it back out for something, but very unlikely, but could happen. So just very light tacks until you get everything ready to go. But this one I'll probably end up welding a little bit on both ends. This end in particular, because this tube is going to land here, like on this side. So this one here going down to where the door bar meets. The one on this side, I'm going to weld this joint here, because when this tube lands in here, it's going to be really hard to get into this joint. Whereas right now it'll be fairly easy. It's just I'm in the habit of putting these real light tacks on it, because as you're building the entire cage, there's some things you need to break out or something like that. So I'm in the habit of just putting real light tacks on it first, setting it, getting out, making sure everything lines up right, making sure it lines up with the other side, if I have the other side in. And then, so like this one, let me get out of here. All right, this one I like to make sure is lined up with the other side on the door or on the A-pillar bars, so that it looks like as it's going up, it's just going up, going through the main hoop, and then continuing into the A-pillar. So it's a little odd because these back tubes are 1.5 inches and the A-pillars are 1 5/8. So the sizes are different, but if you line it up with the center, by the time a window's in and everything, you're not going to be able to really even tell the difference. So it's just one of those small little details that helps bring builds to the next level. When you get everything perfectly lined up with each other, making everything look as symmetrical as you possibly can, it just makes the finished product look that much better. Alright, I wanted to show a little bit about what I was doing with this X-brace, kind of shed a little light on it, because X-braces can be kind of difficult, so I wanted to kind of show you how I do it. Just one of the many ways you could do it, but I like the way I do it, and it seems to work okay, so figured I'd show you guys what was going on here. So, working on the shop car chassis here right now. You can see I already got my first one fit. And so what I did here is I just I used like my tape measure as kind of like a straight edge and went from this corner to this corner and just marked a line kind of right in the middle as where my center line is approximately going to be. And then what I'll usually do is I will get my first tube fit on I guess technically it'd be my second tube, and then I will go just a little bit above my line, or whichever way the longer way is. That way I can still come down to it, or say if I was doing this one first, I would still come up to it. So I like to do that so that, and just leave this mostly fit, just kind of sitting in there as best as I can. You can use a magnet to hold it better if it's not staying in there, whatever. But then I will start fitting my second one. And then with the X-braces, you just kind of have to fit both tubes at the same time and just work them back and forth until you get them to where they meet and they're straight. Because it looks really weird if you get an X-brace in here and you get tubes that line up like that or something. It just looks unprofessional, and when you get them laser straight, they just look really good and gives a much nicer finished look to it. Same thing kind of with the door bars. With the door X's, we try and get them nice and straight. That way they look as pretty much good as they can. And then with these, it's a little bit more of a pain in the butt because they don't fit very well until they fit. These are just one of those ones that you got to take your time, and it's just a process because they don't really fit into place like this one, especially because you're trying to fit it on the bottom of this and up in this corner, so you don't really know your rotations and stuff until it falls into place, and when it falls into place, then it's kind of there. So, you've got a little room, like it's probably 1/8 of an inch past when I was able to actually drop it down in there, and that was just fine-tuning the notches a little bit to get them nice and tight fitting. But anyway, I'm gonna not finish, but I'm gonna work on this a little bit and take you along for the ride. Alright, I got these fitting pretty good. Just took a little bit of finessing on this one just to get it finished out. But, end result, the other trick is holding everything together. But once you get your 7 hands working together, just stuff like this, and I don't have any gap on either of these, so I know they're straight. And both of my notches fit pretty good, so yep, I think we're all good. So I'm gonna go ahead and what I'll usually do is while everything's kind of together, I'll mark about where I want holes. That way I can pull my tubes off and then I can drill my 1/8 inch holes. That way Matt doesn't get all mad when he starts welding everything and has welds blow out on him. So, find the drill here. Gotta be a little bit more precise with these ones since they're small tubes. So you gotta make sure your marks are on point. And then same thing with all the rest of them. We always deburr the inside and wipe out the area right around the notch because it can get cutting fluid in it from, we use cutting fluid on the notcher, so it can get a little bit of that in there, and when you're going around welding it, it tends to pull it through the tube and not good things happen. So I always like cleaning them out. And then this is where clamping this would come in handy, but
you might ban on white hands.
Sure. You can tack it, I'll hold it. Right here. Oh, the welder's not on.
That helps.
It does help when the welder's on. But anyway.
Ready?
Uh-huh.
That's right. In the middle somewhere?
Yeah.
That one will stay where it's at though.
You can take that one.
Oh, is it still not connected?
Nope. That helps. Helps when you look directly into it.
Yes. Yes, definitely.
But, end result, you get tubes that look like they're one tube, essentially. You're just going through another one. And it looks all nice and pretty, so.
Symmetrical and whatnot.
Yep. So, yep. That was a X-brace lesson for the day.